Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating environmental mystery from the semi-arid landscapes of Morocco. For the last 20 years, the climate there has been getting drier and drier, but weirdly enough, the landscape itself is refusing to fade. So, that brings us to the central puzzle that scientists uncovered. It's a real head-scratcher, and it kind of challenges everything we think we know about how dry climates are supposed to work. How is this happening? Okay, so check this out. On one hand, you've got climate data from 2002 all the way to 2022, and it shows a really clear trend. Rainfall is way down. But on the other hand, satellite data shows the plants, the vegetation, have stayed remarkably green and stable. I mean, how is that even possible? What's really going on here? To solve this paradox, researchers basically called in the cavalry, a team of high-tech detectives that are orbiting our planet as we speak. So let's take a look at the tools they used to see the whole picture. First up, they used this incredible tool called NDVI. The easiest way to think of it is like a health report card for plants, but it's done from space. It measures just how green and dense all the vegetation is over these huge areas, giving us a super clear picture of its overall condition, year after year. Okay, next they measured soil moisture. Now, this is exactly what it sounds like. It's the water that's just hanging out in the top layers of the soil. You know, the water that plant roots can actually get to and drink to survive and grow. And finally, we've got the master detective, the Grace satellite. This thing is just amazing. You can think of it like a giant bathroom scale for the entire planet. It measures these teeny tiny shifts in gravity, which lets it weigh the total amount of water that's stored deep, deep underground. So, with all their tools ready to go, the investigators started following the clues. They wanted to see what was really feeding these plants that seemed so tough. And, well, the answer was definitely not what you might expect. The most obvious suspect, of course, was the rain, right? I mean, more rain should mean greener plants. Seems pretty straightforward. Well, it turns out the data showed a surprisingly weak connection, a correlation of just 0.34. In plain English, that means knowing how much it rained in any given month was a pretty terrible way to predict how green the landscape was. So direct rainfall, that's not the main driver here. And get this, it turns out there's a big delay. The effect of rain on plant growth isn't immediate. It actually takes time for that water to soak into the ground and get to the roots. Peak greenness, the luscious growth, often shows up 1 to 2 months after the rain actually falls. This week, delayed connection meant the real answer had to be hiding somewhere else. So let's move on to the next clue and see where the trail leads. And boom, here's where the story gets really clear. The connection between the greenness of the plants and the water that was already stored in the soil was a massive 0.77. Now that is an incredibly strong link. So it's not the rain falling from the sky that matters most. It's the water that's already in the ground. Okay, but wait a minute. That just opens up an even bigger question, right? If rainfall is going down over the long run, how in the world is the soil staying wet enough to keep all these plants happy? And this leads us to the final and most critical revelation of the whole study. So first, let's just look at that 20-year rainfall trend one more time. You can see it right here, a pretty significant drop between 2002 and 2022. No surprise there, we already know the region is getting drier. But then, look at the vegetation over that same time period. Even with less rain, the overall greenness of the landscape is holding steady. This right here, this is the paradox in visual form. And here it is. This is the smoking gun. This is the data from that Grace satellite we talked about. While everything on the surface looked fine, the water hidden deep underground was telling a completely different story. It was a story of a sharp, dramatic nosedive, going from a surplus to a major deficit. So what does this all mean? Well, this quote really says it all. This stability, it's not some natural miracle. The green landscape is basically being kept alive on life support. To make up for the lack of rain, people have started pumping massive amounts of ancient water from deep underground to irrigate crops and keep the fields green. And you know, this discovery, it completely flips the script. It transforms the story from one of surprising ecological strength into, well, a cautionary tale of a hidden and growing weakness. So here's the entire puzzle, solved and laid out for us. To keep the vegetation looking stable while rainfall keeps going down, The region has been making a massive and totally unsustainable withdrawal from its water savings account, its precious groundwater. This is what experts have a name for. They call it fragile resilience. The system looks strong and healthy on the surface, but its stability is completely dependent on a resource that's finite and is rapidly running out. Look, this isn't just a story about Morocco. This is a huge wake-up call for arid and semi-arid regions all over the world that are leaning more and more on groundwater to bridge the gap left by climate change. It reveals the hidden costs, and frankly, it poses a massive challenge for our future. The satellite data has revealed the problem with stunning clarity. The question that remains, for Morocco and for all of us, is what do we do about it? How do we balance the food we need today with the water we're all going to need tomorrow?